Hello, welcome back. My name is Jesse, aka DJ DarkX. I have rebranded my channel to be Jesse, stuck in retro mode. And basically, I'm going to start with that branding from now on. But today, I'm bringing you another tutorial for Pixel Game Maker MV. And this one is to be able to switch between weapons or items or whatever, such and such, with what you would consider LR or L1, L2, R1, R2, that kind of stuff, or being able to switch it out with just one button if you really wanted to. But in this process, we'll basically be doing it with L2 and R2 on a controller. Okay, so let's actually see what it looks like in game real quick. As you can see, I start off with the whip, and if I press R2, I can switch to knife. If I press R2 again, pistol. If I press R2 again, it doesn't go anywhere. But if I press L2, it goes back to knives. And if I press L2 again, back to the whip. If I press L2, nothing. So it does have a way to stop it from continuing on once you reach the maximum or minimum. Let's go ahead and take a look at how that works. First thing to note is that if you want this to be able to transfer over between scenes, don't make the same mistake I did the first time I did this. Do not use the variables that we're going to be using on the object. Use them in global variables right here. So you've got weapons and lives. Lives I guess I'll work on that another time, but weapon, all you need is just a variable for weapon, or whatever you want to call it, items, etc., etc. And we'll start off with the default value of 0. So what you're also going to need is icons. Here in animations, I go to UI, I go to weapons icons, and I have 1, 2, and 3. So these are basically set up so that this way, whenever you switch between them, you'll have an icon regardless, and you'll know the player will know what weapon they currently have equipped. So now we're also going to go into objects, and this is where we're going to set everything up. You really don't have to do anything for the hero except for figuring out how each attack will work with each weapon. So normally they would start off with the whip. That's standard for this character. But then if it equals a certain number, it goes to the knife, and then to the final number to the gun. So let me show you how all of this works. As I said, first you're going to want to start off by creating the variable weapon, or whatever you want to call it, and make sure its default value is 0. And also don't keep on game save. You want this to be kept so this way, when the player loads up their save, that's where they last had it. That's what basically it'll keep what weapon they were last equipped or whatever they have. It's like whatever you have it set up as, and it'll automatically load it into the game. And the reason why I say this is because now we're going to go to the weapons icons. This is part of the UI. This is basically where all the processing is going to be done. You don't have to do it on the player. You don't have to do it anywhere else. Just here. And this will also show what weapon we have on and process all of that at the same time. So we're going to start off with process. Always make sure that all actions are not affected by gravity. When you start off the process, make sure that it has the images for whatever you're using for your icons. For sub weapon, add weapon, or subtract weapon, add weapon, whatever, make sure that takes over motion and not affected by gravity are selected. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to go ahead and start here. We're going to go to change, switch variable, object self, animation frame equals common weapon. What this basically does is that this changes the animation frame, which in this case would be animation frame 1, 2, or 3. All of them right here. or technically 0, 1, 2, and it'll change it to the icon based on the frame of animation. But that is based on the weapon that's equipped, which is going through the global variable of weapon. So, whenever, and this is the nice part, is that because it's its own object that's always loaded with the menu, whenever you press L2 or R2, this will pick it up. The object will pick up the controls. So right here, the following has been input. Make sure that you put change if all conditions are met, not just any, all. When L2 is pressed, not press but on press, and then also the global variable of weapon is greater than 0. If it's like 1 or 2, then you can continue pressing L2. Once it reaches 0, you can't press it anymore. Then basically what we're going to do is we're going to subtract 1 from the weapon counter, from the weapon variable. So if it's at 2, which would be the gun for here, it changes it back to the knives. If it's at 1, it changes it back to 0. For the whip, if it's at 0, it won't go anywhere, because it's always checking to see if it's greater than 0 before this happens. Then we switch it back to normal process. Basically just change unconditionally, go back to process, and then it switches the icon to be what the global variable is showing. Same thing over here, but on R2, and if it's less than, if the common variable is less than 2, then you can go ahead and process this action, which adds 1. So if it's at 0, it goes to 1, which is the daggers. If it's at 1, it goes to 2, which is the pistol. If it's at 2, it won't go any further because you're telling it only check to see if it's less than 2. Again, unconditionally change and goes back to process. So basically what it's going to do is it's going to switch out or change the variable here, and then it'll also change the icon based on the animation frame, which is in process. So that's nice, but how does that work out for the player? You probably don't know how to read this because just about the fact that it's a lot cleaner than a lot of the things you'd ever see in the examples. Unless you know what you're looking at, it might take you a little bit. It may take you a few minutes to actually know what's going on. But basically here, waiting, walk, it's going to whip. So if you press B, and here's where this comes in. Again, make sure all conditions are met. Otherwise, if it's just going off of this, it's just going to continuously whip. But if the common global variable of weapon equals 0, then it'll go to whip, and it'll use the whip animation instead. Let's go check on knife, the knife combo here. From waiting or walk, both are the same. If the global variable of weapon equals 1, it'll go to the knife, and so on and so forth for the gun. So basically, each of these checks, like whenever you're trying to do an attack, it's always going to check whether the variable is equal to 0, 1, or 2. You can always also have it check for a certain switch to be turned on in case you want to equip a weapon, then unequip it, equip another weapon, then unequip it. Go basically from like a default weapon to something else and then back to the default weapon without having to switch over. So you can always do that, and you can always change it as you wish. But that's basically the way that works. It's really simple, and yeah, this is the simple edition. That's why it's titled that. The one that where you'll be able to do something a lot more complex, I can definitely get into. As I was saying, something with switches. But for now, that's basically the way it'll work. Make sure again that your icons are present. You need to have icons when you put it into the scene. Make sure it's on the menu scene like that. I put it right here in the middle of my HUD. And again, let's go ahead and run it one more time. As you can see, the whip works. We'll change it to the daggers and pistol. It works really well. And that's it. That's all you really need to do it. That's all you really need to do it. So, and the lives also, as you saw, that'll also only do a global counter, because if you try to do it based off the object will not save how many lives you've actually accumulated between scenes. So make it a global variable. Anyway, I hope that you were able to find this tutorial and guide informative, and I hope that it helps you. If you like this content, go ahead and subscribe. If you like it, leave a like. If you'd like to comment, leave some feedback, maybe ask some questions, go ahead and leave a comment. I can also be found on Twitter. My handle's in the description. And again, you can also find me in the unofficial Pixel Maker, Pixel Game Maker MV Discord. But with that, I hope that this video did help, and I'll see you next time. Have a good night.